We are live. I always start these off like that.
Hello, everybody.
How we doing? How's the chat going?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know the drill. Tell us where you're at, but it looks like you all got started. Awesome.
We love that.
UK in the house, New Mexico, Colorado, North Carolina. Alex, of course, from Sacramento, holding it down in the chat for our team. Thank you, Alex. Colorado Springs. Hello, Will.
We love shout outs. Who thinks they are the furthest away from Squadcast headquarters?
Which is Oakland.
I
Chat
saw
it
somebody
is.
from Taipei. Taipei might win.
Chaz in there from
Hey
LA.
Chaz.
We know you.
This is so fun.
Unhinged in Nottingham. Thank you for joining us
Oh, Phil's
for
here.
yeah.
Love that. Yeah, shout out to the Squad Pod. In just a few moments, we're going to get started with our guest, Agnes Kozera from Podcorn, founder of Podcorn. She'll be joining us shortly. So many of you are here right now. Thank you for being here. My name's Ariel. I'm Squadcast Community Manager, and I'm joined by Rock Felder. Rock, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the co-founder and CFO of Squadcast, and really excited to. Oh, in Zimbabwe, that might be a winner. This is great. Keep them coming. And where my squad podders at? Anybody a part of the squad pod community? Let us know if you are by sharing your favorite emoji. How
Ooh,
about that? We'll mix
that's a
it up a
fun
little
way to do
bit.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever emoji comes to mind.
Rock,
Ariel, what?
tell him
I
what's
was
on your
gonna.
shirt.
Oh yeah, so we got some new merch. This is the Between Two Mics, our podcast, the Squadcast podcast. We got Zach and me on the shirt, and some updated branding. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Ariel, because you guys were a huge part of getting this
Ooh.
redesign.
Yeah, yeah. Greg wants to know a little bit more about Squad Pod. Yeah, let me quickly tell you about Squad Pod. As the community manager, one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that we had a place for squad casters to join online because we know that podcasting, even though you might have a bunch of interviewees and people who are recording the show with you as guests and co-hosts, it might be still sort of a solitary activity when it comes down to the editing process. So what we like to do is meet up on Slack. The Squad Pod community is Slack based, and then we also do Zoom events and Clubhouse events. And I believe we have a link to the application form to join Squad Pod. Alex, if you could just throw that up there, that would be lovely. And yeah, that's Squad Pod. Any more questions, please keep them coming. We're going to get started in just a moment. Let me lay some ground rules for you folks. Agnes is going to join us on the screen in a moment. And when she does, we're going to talk all about Podcorn and Squadcast and how you can use both of these tools to amplify your podcast. And the reason we're talking about how to monetize your podcast is because we know that a lot of indie podcasters would like to be able to make some cash back. And Podcorn makes it possible for you to apply for sponsorships. And Agnes is going to tell you all about what that means, how to apply, how to be successful in your applications, and all of that. So if you have questions while this is going on, please type them into the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of the screen. That'll help us separate them from the chat. But please stay very active in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to know where you're from. We want to know where you're at on your podcast journey. With that, why don't we do a little podcast shout out? Tell us your podcast. Throw it into the chat. We want to see what's going on. We'll call some of them out here and there. And while you're doing that, Rock, why don't you give us the rundown of how the next 55 minutes is going to go?
Yeah, happy to. So once we get Agnes on stage, she's going to go through a presentation about how you can monetize your podcast. And I'm sure she'll be talking a little bit more about the power of Podcorn, which we're big fans of. I think, Ariel, you're even going to share your personal story of using Podcorn as well, which is pretty awesome. That made me that solidified me being a believer in them, and something that we're going to be using for our podcast Between Two Mics. And then I'll pop on at the end to tell folks a little bit about what we do at Squadcast, and then I think we'll take some Q&A too. There she is. Hey,
Hey,
Agnes.
Agnes. Oh, we can't hear you. Let's see. You're muted. That's why. Or she's reconnecting. Hi. No, I can't hear you. Try it one more time. No, can't hear you for some reason.
Well, while Agnes is getting connected, thank you for sharing a bunch of your shows in here. Some great titles. Muse Mentors, Dave's Head Podcast. Sounds fun, Dave.
Is it all about your head? What goes on in your head?
Yeah. Questions come from that. The Cultural Scavenger, Andy Parker. Thank you for sharing.
There you are,
I think we're
Agnes.
good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I love your A
Awesome.
necklace. Very cute.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so we're just about to hand the stage over. Before we do, in case you did not receive our newsletter that we just sent out announcing the partnership that we have between Squadcast and Podcorn, let us know in the chat because we want to make sure that if you want to receive our emails, you should be receiving our emails. And also, while you're at it, follow us both on social media. Alex, if you could drop both Podcorn and Squadcast into the chat, that would be lovely. And with that, how about we hand over the mic to Agnes?
Yeah, sounds great. Did you guys want to go
Share the slides.
through the slides? We can jump in.
I got you.
Awesome.
Except that we have spinning wheel of death. Please hold, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I think I need to save it in order to play it as a PDF. Will the slides be available after the show? So the good news, Ben, is that this entire presentation will be available right after we finish, and it'll be available right at this same link with everything. All of it will be there, so you will not miss a thing if you have to step out. All right. Okay.
Woohoo.
Is that all right? It's not really letting me play it as a slideshow because it's a PDF.
Oh, no, that works.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
fine. Yeah. No, yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited that Podcorn is partnering with Squadcast. Part of making great content and lending sponsorship is having access to the right tools. So we're so excited to be partnering with you guys on this to help podcasters make great content. And I'm excited to be here to share with you all my tips and tricks and my experience with monetization. I come from the influencer marketing space. So I've seen creators monetize first on YouTube, now with podcasting. So I'm really excited to sort of share my industry tips and tricks, things I've noticed that work for creators that make them get hired, and how they price themselves, and any questions that you guys have, I'm excited to share, and yeah, and jump right in.
Yeah, and just a reminder, folks, that if you have any questions, please ask them in the Ask a Questions tab at the bottom, and keep the chat going. You know, that's comments. If you want to tell us more about your podcast, do it in there. And with that, I'll go to the next slide, Agnes.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so in terms of what we are, so Podcorn is the largest marketplace connecting podcasters to native sponsorship opportunities. We currently service over 45,000 podcasters within our network, and that's across all shapes and sizes and all different categories. We really started Podcorn because we saw there was a lack of infrastructure for podcasters to be able to contact advertisers directly, to collaborate directly without a middleman, and to be in the driver's seat of their sponsorship opportunities and to actually have access to opportunities. We saw that the industry was really taking more of an ad slot mentality approach versus an influencer personality approach that is more about the creator, more about the content and their listenership, and actually making brands a part of the conversation versus a disruption. So Podcorn is a marketplace. It's free to sign up. There's no contracts, no exclusivities. We're not a network in the traditional sense, in that we don't sign you into anything. We don't own your podcast. You always own your content. You maintain 100% of the creative control in terms of everything you do, from how you send proposals to brands, to how you collaborate, to how the finished product actually gets integrated into your episodes. You get to price yourself, which I'll chat about kind of tips and tricks for that in a little bit, but you're basically in the driver's seat. And most importantly, you get to always decide how you want to work with brands. If you ever get a product and you don't like it, you decide this isn't for you, or a brand wants you to do something that you didn't sign up for, you can absolutely walk away at any time. We actually require brands to deposit the money upfront into escrow immediately upon you getting hired. So you always ensure that you get paid for the work that you actually do for the brands. And our team is always there 24/7 to assist with any issues. We can jump to the next slide. So in terms of how Podcorn works, it's super easy. Immediately upon sign up, you can browse opportunities. So the only requirement is that you have an active podcast with an RSS feed. We do recommend that you connect our prefix once you sign up. That just allows us to track and authenticate your downloads and listenership. As you'll see throughout this presentation, I will be preaching that size doesn't really matter, but it's just more so an authentication to brands so that they know that your podcast is real, that it's active, and they get a sense of what to expect. But immediately upon getting authenticated on Podcorn, you can start browsing opportunities. You can, when you see something you like, you can send a proposal to brands, and there I'll chat a little bit more after about the tips and tricks of how to write winning proposals, but you get to be in the driver's seat of that and decide what you want to do, whether you want to do a host read or an interview segment, whatever it is that you're already good at and that fits natively with whatever it is that you're doing, you can do on Podcorn. Once you're hired, you get to collaborate in a secure workroom. Everything is held there, from like talking points to brand assets, all the communication. You can easily reach the brand at any time, as well as our support team. And then we offer quick payouts. So no waiting 30 days, post finishing your sponsorship. You can absolutely get paid immediately upon brand's approval of the content. So as soon as the brand says this is great, you can publish. We release payment to you via PayPal or Stripe. So that's kind of your choice. And sorry to jump in on the other end, but also feel free to ask any questions and we can stop, and I'm happy to sort of break up the slides.
We've got questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay, just a reminder, this is more of an interactive chat, so Agnes does not have to go through these slides one by one and with no interruption, so please feel free to throw questions into the chat, even if it's as basic as like, why would an advertiser advertise on my podcast? I only get 500 downloads. Feel free to ask that question. We'll get into it. You have a question from a username Dying Here, who says, if your podcast is new and has not reached a high number of downloads, is that a reason to hold off on Podcorn and just use Buy Me a Coffee for now?
No, that's a great question. So again, size isn't everything. We really change it so that podcasters can price themselves on other factors, whether it's the creative or the length of the integration, whether you have a topical expertise, like you have a degree in nutrition and this advertiser is a nutrition brand trying to reach a certain type of listenership. Even if you have 500, that's enough of a niche demographic to move the needle for a brand. A lot of the times we really recommend to hire podcasters, we recommend to brands to hire podcasters at scale. So not just one creator, but many. So in that sense, size becomes less of importance. It's all about fit. The general rule, I sort of think, is that once you start getting 100 listeners on average per episode, you can approach brands for sponsorships. And then we can get into in a little bit how to price based on those different factors and sizing. But yeah, I don't think size matters. We've seen for brands, niche podcasters convert very well and be very successful and monetize. And that's the beauty also about native, is the fact that it's not just impression based. There's so many other things that go into it that show why you're valuable and why your voice matters. Hopefully that helps.
Love it. Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they get into the podcast space, they think that there's these hard and fast rules when it comes to when you can monetize, when you can approach sponsors, when you can do this, when you can do that. But there are no rules. It's not a regulated kind of network that you need to pass a certain number of downloads in order to have this an ad for 30 seconds in your pre-roll or anything like that. So really, if you have an idea and if you have a niche and if you can identify a brand that would work for your niche, even if it is 500 people, that's 500 people that place might not get in touch with otherwise. So you could be offering them a service.
Yeah, and sometimes, you can look at other things that you have to offer, whether you have a Facebook group around your podcast or whether you have a social media presence across Instagram or TikTok or YouTube if you do a podcast. So you can count those other things into how you negotiate pricing for brands and to making yourself valuable. And even if you're small, sometimes bundling it up and offering brands something extra helps you stand out. Like we've seen podcasters be like, I'll do a product review and 3 shout outs for the price of 1, right? And they get hired. So sometimes going a little above and beyond if it's a brand that you really want to work with and offering them extra so that collectively they get that number of impressions that they're looking for because they're going to be on a number of episodes, that also helps stand out and get hired. Yeah. We can jump to the next slide
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. We have a ton of questions rolling in, which we love. So let's go to the next slide, then we'll answer some more questions.
Yeah, so in terms of the sort of type of content that we do, there's a difference between native and programmatic. So programmatic is obviously like dynamic ad insertions, traditional ad formats, like the ad slot mentality. Podcasters don't always have as much control in terms of what type of content sits on their podcast. It's not very personal. It's more of a break. There's a huge disconnect between the listenership and the brand and the podcaster. Whereas native, you're actually more of a brand ambassador. You're an influencer for the brand. It's more prestigious in that sense that the brand is choosing your voice, choosing your brand aesthetic to be the voice of their brand. And you can create content that relates to your passions and interests. You can actually test products because brands can ship you products, which isn't something you can do with traditional ad formats. You can request coupon codes and discount codes for your listeners, which is great because you can get them deals that they can't get anywhere else. So you can position yourself as an influencer and expert in that sense, and you can earn more. So to that point, that even if you don't have, a certain number of impressions, you are still worthwhile to brands. You're an asset to brands because of all these incredible other things, such as the creative that you're making, the engagement within your community, the relationship you have with your tight knit, even if it's small, listenership base. We can jump to the next slide.
Okay, awesome. And we have one question, I think, before we get to the next slide. A question that has come up in a few different iterations throughout. So I just want to make sure that those people are heard. Andy says he's seen you on the Buzzsprout how-to video, which was super informative. But more often than not, when they submit to Podcorn, they don't hear anything back. So first of all, what would you say to the folks who keep submitting and don't hear anything back? What can they do to sweeten up their proposals? And also, is there possibly a future move to get feedback on why a brand might not have chosen your podcast?
Yeah, no, that's a lot of questions. Those are all good questions and important questions. So the way Podcorn is structured is that you don't automatically get notifications when you send a proposal to brands. We don't also send notifications out that brands have looked at your proposal. You only get notified when you're either hired or when a brand wants to negotiate pricing or when they want to ask you a question about your proposal. So I know that's frustrating for some podcasters in that sense, but sometimes not hearing back doesn't mean you're not hired. Sometimes brands hire in batches. They keep a campaign open. So, they get so many proposals, it takes time to filter through. And then when they do, they might hire a first batch and then you might potentially get hired in another batch. So not hearing back doesn't mean you'll never get hired, but it's all about just persistence. If you're not hearing back, I know it's frustrating, but it just takes the right brand and coming across the right advertiser to see you. And we're working very hard. I mean, now even especially post our acquisition, we are working very hard to bring a lot more deals to podcasters so that they have more opportunities to send proposals and more opportunities to get hired. You can also go back and edit your proposal or change your pricing or follow back up with a brand. Persistence is key, passion is key. and I'll dive deeper into sort of like what you can do proposal wise. But as I said, like offering more for the price to go above and beyond, just really, leading with the creative right off the bat, spelling out the brand fit right out front, because sometimes it's not obvious, right? You might have a parenting podcast and you might be a mom, but then you might also love fitness, or you might be a drummer and you have a drumming podcast, but then you might also love fashion. So spelling out the connection to the brand when they might not necessarily see one right off the bat is really good, and just showing how you're gonna help them with their bottom line, right? Like, what is it that are you gonna share the coupon codes? Are you gonna share links? Why do you think this is relevant for your listenership? If you have majority of a female audience, let the brand know that if it's a product targeting females, because they might not know that right off the bat. So just going above and beyond to include a lot of information, and certainly not copying and pasting proposals.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, I think. So the reason I'm obsessed with Podcorn is because, well, first of all, even before we figured out that we were going to work together between Squadcast and Podcorn, I was using Podcorn to monetize my podcast called Counter Programming. And it was a pandemic distraction cast where each week we'd focus on a different type of count or counter. And the idea was that the pandemic is really hard. Let's give you some counter programming to let your mind focus on something else. And we would literally do episodes on countertops like marble, steel, granite, and wood, and recycled glass, and then other things like the Count Dracula and Count Von Count. Anything that you can think of with the word count or counter, we did an episode on. Extremely niche, as you can tell, but we were able, I think, to monetize. I mean, I don't know what percentage of our episodes, but I would say about 30% of the proposals that I sent in were accepted, which, we sent in a lot of proposals, and we definitely did not monetize every single episode, but it was really a great way to bring in some money and to subsidize some of the production costs of the podcast. And I think the reason we were so successful is because the brands that we approached, genuinely, I really was interested in working with them, and I would write to them very earnestly about why I thought I would work with them. Even one time we were looking at a Romer skincare. I don't know if you remember that brand, Agnes, but we submitted a proposal to Romer Skincare. It's just a skincare brand. And I said in my proposal, I used to have really bad acne, and so I'm very down to talk about how I overcame that. And that is the kind of thing that, I'm really giving a piece of myself to this proposal in order to catch the attention of the person that I'm proposing to.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. And we also do have an in-house campaign team. There's certain brands that we hold hands with to help them with their hiring. So, if you're not hearing back, don't be shy. Feel free to email support and flag it to us. We're always sometimes happy to bump a brand for you. Or, we also sometimes have our team will keep you in mind for opportunities that come up internally and offer you opportunities that way too. So yeah, let us know. Just be loud about it. We love obviously persistence and passion, and so we're happy to help where we can.
Totally. Yeah. And if anybody's interested in seeing some of the proposals that I've sent, you can feel free to email me and I'll reply to you. And we can just be in touch about that. Here's my email address. I know I'm opening up a wormhole, but I really think that writing persuasively is the difference between, getting accepted and getting ignored. So, or not ignored, but, potentially passed over. So definitely feel free to send me an email saying, hey, I'd love to see your proposals, and I'm happy to respond to you and kind of coach you through it if you're interested. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes even opening up with why you love the brand, if you've used them before personally, or, if it's a skincare brand and your listenership has been asking about your skincare routine. It's so simple. Sometimes involving the feedback from your community, if it's relevant, makes sense. Or if you have an upcoming guest who's an expert, maybe you're not an expert, but you have an upcoming guest, right? That is an expert in the industry of the brand. You can mention that. I've seen podcasters lead with hey, I have a up and coming episode that I think is going to perform really well because it's really anticipated. I think it would be really good to feature you in that, and here's why. And that catches brands' attention. So just leading with some ideas and love for the brand is really helpful versus just like your resume, like this is who I am. Just make it about the brand. I think it helps.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay, should we take one more question and then move on?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Is there a minimum threshold of downloads given the average podcast has 150 downloads? We kind of talked about that a little bit. I think, if you want to just reiterate real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So on Podcorn, as long as your podcast is up and active and running, you can sign up. We do recommend just having even like some sort of consistency in posting where you have a regular schedule, where you're showing you're serious about your craft. So even, getting 100 listeners on average per episode, that's enough. As long as there's some sort of story, there's content, you can speak to what your vertical is, what your niche is, what you're doing, like you actually know what types of brands you want to go after and why. Establishing that is important. But other than that, no, it's again, like even if you're small, if you've crafted some sort of specialty in a niche that converts really well for brands. For instance, like I love talking about this example, but one of our brands, Lumen, which they make a device to help you hack your metabolism. They worked with actually smaller podcasters who were either fasting experts or health and fitness experts, and they weren't big, but they were experts within the topic, and they were able to ask hard questions, really talk about the how-tos, get into the science of the brand and the product and why it makes sense. And they were able to move the needle for the brand. They got hired because of their expertise, not because of their size. So it doesn't matter. And I think the beauty about podcasting is that it's conversational storytelling. There's so much more time and real estate to do something authentic and organic for brands. So if you are an expert or passionate about a certain topic, if that comes across the brands, they'll look for your voice. And sometimes you might be testing products for brands, right? Even before their launch. So, and a lot of brands, especially like on us, it's a lot of startups that we work with. It's not just the Fortune 500 brands, although, we work with Sony, Amazon, and like others, big companies as well. But there's also smaller brands that are doing it for the first time. They're looking for podcasters to be the experts, to help guide them, to be the first users of their product. Brands already are familiar with the power of influencers and influencer marketing and the fact that not everything has to be polished, that it could be in your own voice. So the power of your voice is what I would lead with regardless of size.
Hope that answers your question. I had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're getting the slide deck back.
Oh, no worries. No problem.
In the meantime, we had another question. We have tons of questions, which thank you for taking me up on my ask when I said ask questions this whole time.
Awesome.
Much appreciated. Let's see. For the folks we had a bunch of people asking about the applications and not getting them answered. Do you feel like we gave you a bit to go off of there? Please let us know in the chat or in the questions if there's a follow-up. We just want to make sure we get all of your questions answered as best as we can. Somebody asked, what is a high number of downloads? And of course that's subjective, but I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, Agnes.
I think brands feel like anybody getting 5,000 downloads per episode or more is already more of like getting into a mid-tier established creator. That means, you've probably been doing the content thing for a while. You've already established your topics, your niche, your listenership base. I think that is sort of like where you're getting to more established. Anything below that is more of an up and coming creator. But absolutely, there's value in that. And I think because we're a tech platform, we're not an agency or network, we make it easy for brands to hire creators at scale so they can work with 50 creators even below 5,000 who are super fans of their product. And that's why that makes a lot of sense for them. Because it's easier to manage, at scale.
We will answer questions in a bit about how to price yourself. So I think with that, there are so many questions. We might have to go a little bit longer, but let's continue on the slide and then we'll come back to questions after the next break.
Oh, sounds great. So yeah, in terms of types of sponsor content that you can do on Podcorn, obviously the sky's the limit. You know, podcasting is still very young, and a lot of what content is going to look like in terms of branded content in a year or two is going to be very different than it looks like today. So it's up to the creators to lead with the creative ideas. But there's obviously like standard brand shout outs, giveaways you can do, and those are shorter forms of content that could be at the beginning, middle, or end of a podcast. And we're not talking like traditional pre-rolls where it feels like an ad, but it could be you integrating a shout out for the brand at the beginning of the episode in your intro, where you talk about, give them a shout out like, oh, hey, I just received this product in the mail. I'm going to be trying it out and letting you guys know my feedback. So stay tuned, kind of like an introduction to an endorsement. Or you could be doing like my favorite obsessions of the month and including the brand in that if you really love them. So there's different ways that you can really integrate it. It's funny because a lot of brands ask for a mid-roll spot, but over time in our tests, we found that actually pre-rolls convert a lot better. So I would definitely recommend podcasters who want to move the needle for brands to include brands in an intro. It's also great because sometimes your intro brand doesn't have to be 100% episodically relevant. It could just be something you're passionate about or want to share with your listeners. Whereas like something more in the middle, I would recommend more for it to be relevant to your actual episode, if that makes sense. And then there's more dedicated, more involved content that you can command higher pricing for, which is like interview segments where the brand comes on and they'll pay you for you to ask them the hard questions and get a little bit more journalistic with them. Topical discussions, again, talking about something that relates to the brand. You know, for instance, if you're talking about the importance of going electric and you mention a Tesla sponsorship, Tesla's not on Podcorn, but this is just an example. But or how to use a product. I think those are great for anything like tech gadgets or anything that's a little bit more complicated to use, and more expensive products do really well with how-tos, because just understanding how things work and what makes them great or the science behind them is great. And product reviews are always great as well, because you get to provide your own experience. And again, like brands really like things that aren't polished. I would just be upfront with the brand when there's things you want to say that are a little bit negative or that you want to improve within the product, so that they're not surprised by it. But brands usually like it. And then there's things like hauls and favorites where you talk about a bunch of products that you accumulated, and then the brand endorsement is one of those products that you talk about. So there's different things, and that's not limited to like all you can do. The sky's the limit, as I said. It's up to your creativity and however you want to include the brand. So I would always just be as creative as possible. If you want to jump to the next one.
Yeah, I'll also share that one of the brands that hired us the most when my podcast was working with Podcorn was a brand called Thousand Fell, if anybody's familiar with them. It's a sustainable sneaker company, and my co-host actually had bought Thousand Fells a few months before, so we were already invested in the brand, loved what they did. So though we didn't have the download numbers that they wanted, they even said we'd like to work with podcasts over 5,000 downloads per episode. We only have about 2,500 at most at our best episode. We reached out to them and we basically wrote a very impassioned proposal a pitch saying, we love Thousand Fells. We personally use them. We have a really cool integration idea, which is that we want to count the number of steps that we take in New York City over the weekend. Our podcast is about anything to do with counts or counters. Each episode has the word count or counter in the title. So Shira, my co-host, wore her Thousand Fells, recorded herself walking throughout the city. She got like 20,000 steps that weekend, and we put that as our ad. And they were obsessed with it. They loved it because it's a really creative way to talk about how great these shoes are. So yeah, you can
Awesome.
really go above and beyond, even if you don't have the download numbers that they're looking for.
Yeah,
Hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that segues perfectly into this slide, which is like, it's really all sizes and everything. It's really about conveying that brand fit, doing your homework on the brand, leading with the creative and your topical expertise if you have some, whether you have a degree in whatever industry that the brand is in, or whether you have a relevant guest, or just even like the passion or relevant fit to your listenership. As I said, like if majority of your audience is male or female and it relates to the brand, make that known. For instance, like a lot of brands don't know that a lot of true crime podcasts have majority of a female listenership, which is really interesting. But for brands wanting to target a female demographic, it makes sense to say it. So these are pretty much things that we all talked about, but it's important to just show brands how you're going to drive results, or to be thinking about it. Even sometimes asking a question, are you looking to drive installs or get people to buy a product or get them to a certain page? Like, what is the brand's outcome? And showing that, you know, oh, you're willing to maybe go above and beyond and share it on your Instagram or write a blog post. There's so many extra things that podcasters can do to show brands that they care about them and get hired, for sure.
Yeah. Why don't we take another question?
Sounds great.
So many of them. All right. Could you talk about how we might integrate affiliate programs with Podcorn, please?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're actually going to be launching a performance based product within the platform that will allow podcasters to just get paid based on sort of like affiliate and driving results, because we have gotten that request a lot from the community, in the sense that some podcasters that are small and up and coming, they drive incredible results for the brands, and you know, just through sales of an expensive product, they can monetize a lot more. So we will be releasing that shortly, but that's something you can also negotiate with the brand in the workroom once you're hired. And then like we guarantee a flat fee no matter what, just because we want to ensure that podcasters will get paid for the work that they do, which is why we ask you to set a flat fee, so that even if the content doesn't perform, you know, maybe it's not your fault. Maybe the brand's website isn't converting because there's something wrong with it, right? Like maybe there's an issue on their end, and we want to ensure that podcasters get paid no matter what. So there's a flat fee, but you can negotiate with the brands to set you up with an affiliate program within the workroom, and we've seen it done. But we will be also launching an official product where you can do that.
Sweet. That's really exciting. I'm sure there'll be tons of information when that is launching. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll hear about it. Sweet.
Yeah.
Let's take one more question. So curious about how advertisers get onboarded. Are there any advertisers who will onboard onto Podcorn but then post a campaign and then not answer those campaigns? Does that ever happen?
So no, we have a community team that is always checking and looking, make sure that every advertiser on Podcorn is active. As I said, like advertisers do get a lot of proposals, so sometimes just filtering through them or hiring in batches. Some advertisers post, you know, and they move their launch, so they keep a campaign open. There's different factors. But no, everybody is active. We vet the campaigns and the brands before they're approved to the sponsorship dashboard. So we have a community team that when a brand signs up and they create a campaign, it goes into queue, and then our team reviews everything and makes sure, you know, that it's an actual company, that it's not something that is either a scam product or can hurt the community in any way. So we try our best to vet for that. Yeah.
Sweet. And then just one more quick question. I think this will be quick. Does Podcorn work with Megaphone, from Mark?
Megaphone. I don't know. So we have, in terms of dynamic ad insertions, no. But we work with a bunch of hosting providers that are our partners, like anyone from like Buzzsprout, Podomatic, RSS, and a bunch of others. So from a hosting perspective, yes. I'm not sure if Megaphone, from a hosting perspective.
I think also,
but I don't.
Some people might be wondering, like, if basically Podcorn is not exclusive. So if you're working with a brand on Podcorn, you can work with other brands elsewhere too. So
Oh,
I think-
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
So any hosting provider that you have, there's just certain hosting providers that don't allow like a prefix, for instance, for podcasters to install our prefix to let us track their downloads. Like Anchor, for instance, is one. But majority of hosting providers do allow it, and they're great, and they want podcasters to easily monetize through other forms. So, but yeah, there's no exclusivities. You can come and go as you see fit. If you're using someone else, or even if you're signed up with a network, like we work with so many networks as well, whether it's like Studio 71 or Dear Media or others, that we provide sponsorship opportunities to their talent as well. So even if you're signed up with a network, unless you have signed your life away with them, which hopefully you didn't, you should be allowed to use Podcorn, and if you use us, you can use anyone as well.
Awesome. I just put a poll up asking, is your podcast monetized? Would love to hear from folks. And if it is somewhere in between, let us know in the comments.
Great. Oh, and just to add on the Megaphone question, like if you're doing dynamic ad insertions already and you have someone that you're using for dynamically inserting ads, you could still do native. It's completely different. Everything we do is done by the host. It's in the voice of the host. It lives as part of the episode forever. It's very different, and that, you get to choose those types of opportunities and what fits for you and how many you do. With Podcorn, you can do up to 4 per episode. But yeah, we recommend less is more and giving brands more time, because if you give brands more time, it's better integrated, and then you can command higher pricing.
Love it. Okay, awesome. Should we go to the next slide? We'll come back later for more questions.
Sounds great. Probably through answering the questions, it like goes through the deck anyway, but
Yeah.
awesome.
All right, so this is going to be a popular one, I think. People are wondering how much their podcast is worth.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It really depends on a number of factors, and some creators price themselves based on a creative. So how much work goes into the sponsorship, the length of the integration, their niche and expertise, their production time and effort. And then there's some that like to calculate a flat fee based on a CPM range. And I'll tell you how to calculate it, but essentially like where we see the CPM range fall based on the hires that advertisers make are anywhere between a $20 CPM to a $50 CPM. And that again depends on whether you're doing like a shout out would be on the lower end, and then something more integrated could be like a $50 CPM because you're giving the brand more dedicated airtime. But essentially we recommend looking at your last 30 days of download. So what you get after 30 days of your episode going up on average. And then, so for example, if you want to charge a $25 CPM, and you get on average 10,000 downloads per episode, then you can divide 10,000 downloads by 1,000 impressions and then multiply that by the $25 CPM, and then you'll come up with $250, which is what you can charge as your flat fee. And then regardless of how your episode performs, you're actually guaranteed that. And then if your episode starts performing better than 10,000 downloads on average, for instance, then you can increase it over time. But it just allows you to kind of pick a range and justify to the brand how you're pricing. And then if you have under 1,000 downloads, we really recommend just going with a flat fee of like $25, for instance. And then maybe like if let's say you get 500 downloads per episode, then you can give the brands 2 shout outs for one to kind of make it worthwhile if you're charging a $25 CPM. If that makes sense. But yeah, we generally see creators kind of charge between like $20 to $40 flat fee if they're under 1,000 downloads, depending on what it is that they're doing or how many episodes they're throwing in. Or sometimes, you might be bigger on Instagram because you're just starting a podcast. So you can charge based on your Instagram following, but like everything we do has to have an audio component. So you put it there, but then you also post it on your Instagram so you can charge higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Just to give a personal example, if folks are interested, let me know. So I had learned about CPM a few years ago and wasn't sure if I would ever use it to base my podcast sponsorships off of. But I think even if you find it to be kind of a waste of time because you're not using it per se for your podcast, I think it does help as a baseline. I think that's how I've heard a lot of people refer to it, is that the CPM, the high end of the CPM to a certain extent, depending on how good the match is for your brand or for your podcast, that could be your bottom line. So for example, if I was not able to find during the podcast series that I did on counter programming on countertops, I was not able to find like the Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that to sponsor. But if I had, that would have been a perfect match, and I probably would have charged way over the CPM, way over the traditional CPM. So I think it really comes down to how much you can deliver for this brand. And I just used it to a certain extent as my baseline. And then you got to feel confident, because once you're actually selling the thing on your show, you want it to do well. You want it to be something that the advertiser comes back to you and is like, we loved running an ad with you. That was the best ad read we've ever heard. And I can send some folks, if you're interested, in addition to my, I'm obsessed with Podcorn, obviously. In addition to my pitch, which feel free to email me about if you want to see it. I'm also happy to send you some of the ad reads that I've done and some of the ones that people have said, this is the best ad read we've ever heard. So please feel free to reach out to me about that.
Yeah, and the ranges that even I'm throwing out or that you're pricing yourself, like those are just things that I've been seeing in terms of podcasters, what they get hired for. But it's, it depends. Like if you have a niche expertise in something, you can charge more, right? If you have a really creative, cool idea, or if you're doing something on location or whatever it is that you come up with, like you can charge whatever it is that you want. Like that is the power of Podcorn, is that you can decide for yourself. It's just, obviously, I think it's kind of testing, right? Like test different strategies with different brands and see what works. And obviously it depends on how much you want to get hired too. I've seen creators who get 1 million downloads do things for almost nothing just because they love the brand and they want to be associated with them, and it's some brand that they wanted to work with for a really long time. So it depends, but the sky's the limit in terms of pricing. It's just as long as you can justify it and explain it to the brand.
Agnes, do authors or publishers ever use Podcorn for book reviews?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if maybe in the marketplace we've had some, but I definitely see how it would drive insane conversions and do really well. So I don't know. I think like in terms of a lot of the brands that have used or use Podcorn so far are a lot of brands who are direct to consumer brands who really understand the power of creators and the power of influencer marketing, and have perhaps even worked with YouTubers or with creators on other social media companies or other social media channels, or brands who are startups, right? And they don't have the money to work with like a big network that charges insane amounts of money for one creator that could be a hit or miss. And they understand the power of the long and mid tail or creators of all sizes. So it's all over the mix, but I absolutely, I hope we will have those types of brands on Podcorn because it would be a great fit.
Love it. We have tons of questions, and we want to make sure we have time to bring Rock back up and to tell folks about, if they are Podcorners, that they get a special deal with Squadcast. We've got a lot going on just with 12 minutes left. So let's answer another question. Then let's have Rock on to help answer some questions. Then we'll keep going maybe a little bit if you have time. And if folks are interested, Agnes, can you stay a little bit after?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Sounds like we've got a lot of people interested in monetizing, not sure how to do it. Podcorn can help, but how do we best use Podcorn? Okay. So just to amplify this question, Casper says, has anybody here had success with winning a proposal on Podcorn? So please feel free to answer her in the comments. And then let me go to our questions over here. We're a UK-based business podcast. Are there opportunities via Podcorn for us across the pond?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are open to podcasters everywhere. We do have some podcasters based in the UK. We are, just from like a presence perspective, we've been going after US-based advertisers. Now that we're acquired, we have a lot more resources. So international is definitely in our wheelhouse. But a lot of brands don't care so much where the podcaster is located, but where their listenership is located. And there are podcasters who are based in the UK who have also a lot of US-based listeners just because of the English language factor. But yeah, we are our basically website is in English, so any English speaking brand, it could be based in the UK, can be on Podcorn. We just haven't been targeting those advertisers per se, but it is something that we want to do in the future. But hopefully, as long as you have a English speaking podcast, then you can get hired. And a lot of brands who are in the US also have a UK presence nowadays. So
same with Canada.
Yeah, same with Canada. Yeah.
Sweet. Hope that answers your questions. What is typically the time you hear back from a brand once you send a proposal, if there is an average response time?
I say like within 30 days. Some brands collect proposals and then they decide who to hire. They have teams, they have marketing teams that they go through different layers of review and approval. So I'd say like 30 days is good, but I would follow up and be persistent and say hello and remind them how excited you are to work with them.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing, so somebody in the comments is saying that sometimes, you can make more money if you go directly to an advertiser. I think the reason I really liked Podcorn is because I didn't have time to do that. I only had time, because I'm an independent podcast producer, to, when I get the email every week from Podcorn saying like, here are the sponsorships that are available, that's when I have time to quickly go on, see if any of those match the demographics that I hit, and to apply that way. So I think that's to me why Podcorn is so appealing, just to address some of that.
You can always go direct to brands too, and try that way. But I think like the feedback I get from podcasters is that they like the security. They like that we require brands to deposit money up front and that we hold it in escrow, that we guaranteed payment for the work that they do. Because sometimes, creators, a brand will change their mind if you go direct and be like, I don't want to pay you. I don't like this. I changed my mind. Or you'll post it and you won't get paid. And then there's no repercussion for that. So it's just the extra added security, but you can absolutely go to a brand direct that you like. And as I said, like there's no exclusivity with Podcorn. You don't have to stay with Podcorn. Obviously, the opportunities you find on Podcorn through us, you have to keep on the platform, but anything else you're able to pursue on your own. But it's just, there's always risks of going at it alone.
One other question, and then we'll bring Rock back up here. That's a really good point. Good old boy Mike says the escrow feature is a big deal. I got ripped off on Advertise Cast for $125,000. That's nuts. That sucks, man.
Oh wow.
Alina Warwick says, since the ad is living in the podcast forever, does the price go up when the downloads increase? That's a really good question.
So no, that's the bad and good part, is that if your episode tanks, you still get paid. If your episode performs really well, the good thing is you could charge higher next time. So a lot of podcasters use that to get rehired. And I see podcasters change their rate all the time. We see that networks changing rates all the time. The listenership has grown, it's performing better. So I think as you see the listenership maybe like increase for like 2-3 episodes consistently, you can go back to the brand and be like, hey, this performed so well. And I think that's the important thing, is the follow-up, is doing the follow-up after your episode goes live, to go to the brand and be like, look how well this is doing. And even within 30 days, what we do, we generally recommend within 30 days of the episode being live, you go back to the brand at the 30-day mark and let them know, one, where it was published. Well, you should let them know where it was published right away, all the different places, but go back and let them know how it performed, who engaged, or if you got comments on other social media channels about the product or any feedback. You should let the brand know and come in higher pricing next time.
Yeah. So I just invited Rock back up on the stage because We have 6 minutes officially left of our conversation today. So I just want to get Agnes and Rock to chat really quickly about the Podcorn Squadcast partnership, and then we can go back to answering some more questions. So Rock, welcome back to the stage. I will unshare this for a moment so that our faces can be big for you.
Trying to make sure my settings are correct.
Here we are.
Yeah,
You sound good.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you for that, Agnes. I was really enjoying it. I love learning about how Podcorn is changing the way podcasts are valued and monetized. And I really like how you reiterated that size doesn't matter. I think that's really exciting because, whether we like it or not, I think we podcasters, independent creators, we're in competition with big media companies. But thankfully, with products like Podcorn and Squadcast, we can compete. Because at Squadcast, we see content creators as like micro media companies, and that we believe the quality of your show is one of the best ways for you to separate and stand out from the other shows in your category. So we're really trying to lower the barriers and make quality accessible to all.
Absolutely. No, this is why we're so excited about you guys. We're all about democratizing content production, democratizing monetization, making it accessible for all. I really believe that podcasting, in terms of content accessibility, should be free, right, for listeners to access. But in order to have great content, you need to have great tools, and so very grateful for platforms like you to deliver that service, to make it easy so that you could have studio quality production as an independent creator, and you are very competitive with that. And then it's incredible. So very excited to be able to share that with our network.
Yeah. So what is happening as a result of this partnership? So of course, we're going to do this event. We're going to do more events like this to help creators monetize, and on the Squadcast side to help them create the best content possible so that they can monetize. But what else? What can folks expect to see from this partnership?
Yeah, definitely lots of events. Our podcasters can access a month for free of Squadcast, which is really great. So I'm really excited. So thank you guys for that. And we're really excited to service all your amazing creators in any shape and form that we can, and hope that they sign up and try it out and find sponsorship opportunities. And we'll have lots of different content for you, different tips and tricks, other webinars if this has been helpful, or there's other things you want to know. I'd love to sort of do it the other way for Podcorn folks to learn how to record amazing, great content for podcasters who are getting started, because there's so many podcasters who are just launching and have signed up to Podcorn. So really excited to provide as many resources as anyone wants to hear. So I'd love to hear back to sort of what everyone wants to hear from us, and how we can collaborate.
Yeah, and one good way to let us know about that is to type it into the chat right now, or I did give my email away beforehand, so please feel free to reach out to me. Let us know how you like these community events. This is kind of under the banner of Squadcast's community. So again, if you're interested in joining our dedicated Squadcast community, you can do that. It's free as long as you're a Squadcaster. Alex, I don't know if you're still here, but if you could drop the application form to the Squad Pod, that's our Squadcast community that meets on Slack. Please do that and apply, and we'll see you on Slack, and we just keep in touch there between events. And we have events all the time, including this, very high value. We just want to make sure that, you are empowered to make the best content you possibly can, and you're able to monetize that content. So with that, why don't we keep answering some questions? Rock, do you want to stay up on stage?
Yeah, if you want to keep me here, but I don't want to take any shine away from you two.
Agnes, did you want to, was there anything else on the slide deck that you wanted to touch on?
No. Feel free to share the slides with everyone if it's helpful. And nothing in particular. I think we've covered it a lot with the great questions. So I don't think there's anything else. I would just say, think of your listeners when working with brands. With great power to pick sponsorships comes great responsibility. So be mindful. Don't just accept monetization just to monetize. pick brands that you actually like and are passionate about. Make sure to be honest with your listeners that you're working with brands. There's no stigma around that anymore. We live in a very different world, and listeners appreciate the fact that, you know, you're vetting these companies for them or bringing them deals. So ask for coupon codes, ask for discounts. A way to pay it forward for your listeners is really important. And just know your value. Just know you're amazing, and don't shy away from that. Don't be afraid to negotiate for yourself, and just put yourself out there and be persistent. Keep at it. It's like anything else. It's like a job. The more proposals you send, the more likely you are to get hired. And yeah, we'll be working very hard behind the scenes to bring more amazing advertisers so that you do have more choice, more opportunities, and great partners as well at your disposal. So
so lots of ways to stay connected, lots of ways to continue learning from us so that your podcast can continue to grow both in terms of content and in terms of monetary sponsorship. I'm loving all of the positive comments over here. Thank you all so much for your support of us. With that in mind, if you want to stay in touch, we're not done yet, but if you want to stay in touch, please do follow us on social. We're at Squadcast FM, and you're at Podcorn FM?
Podcorn.com.
Podcorn.
Podcorn FM on social, yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right, let's go to another question. How do you measure and determine the demographics of my audience, both podcast and blog? It's kind of a larger industry question. So Rock or Agnes, feel free to jump in.
Take it away, Agnes.
Yeah, well, we connect through our prefix, we connect to your hosting provider. So we're able to fetch like download and listenership information and like demographics in terms of country of like where your listenership is based. A lot of creators leverage Spotify to be able to find out their demographic, whether it's like male and female and the concentration there, and they send screenshots to advertisers on Podcorn. So even if you're not connected through our prefix, you can send screenshots. And I would actually like volunteer that information up front so that brands don't have to ask. It's not, because size matters. It's just shows that you're not ashamed of your size and that you're being honest and just giving the brands a view of what they can expect.
Yeah, I think it seems like a lot.
Do you have anything to add?
I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of stuff that you're talking about deals with like confidence is what I'm getting from, and I think a platform like yours really helps with that. We certainly want to help folks when they are recording remotely with their confidence that they know that them and their guests are going to look and sound their best. In regards to the question though, can some of that information be provided by the hosting provider? Like a Libsyn or Simplecast or something like that? Do they have those type of demographics?
Yeah, I don't think they break it down like male to female.
Good point.
I think that's Spotify, but everything else, in terms of like country breakdown and how much listenership you get per episode, absolutely. But more of the like demographic, as in male to female, it's more.
That's true.
I think Spotify. But podcasting is growing. It's a very new medium, and I think we'll see a lot more innovation around data and so I think it's gonna be a lot easier for podcasters to access over time. But again, not everything is measurable. A lot of brands do this for brand awareness, not just for or to actually drive product. So that's where why we're so excited about our performance tool, because that will allow podcasters to not just be based on impression, but actually driving results for brands and get compensated for that too. So there's other ways that we're constantly trying to show the value of a podcaster, and then also integrating again your other social media channels. So even if you can't access what your demographic breakdown is for your podcast, if you're connected to YouTube, YouTube gives that information. So if you're majority female on YouTube, then likely your podcast might be as well if it's a similar topic. So give brands that information at least, and so that they have it.
Yes. Let's see. So many questions.
Is this a record for questions in one of these webinars?
Honestly, yes. This is really thank you for your high engagement and for
Yes.
being here, folks.
Awesome.
So here's an interesting question from podcastersdirectory.com. Hello to you both. We're launching a 501c3 nonprofit podcast in the fall. Are there companies that are looking to advertising opportunities in the nonprofit space? If so, any suggestions on how to approach them and how much advance time should we allow prior to launch?
Currently we're working with the CDC for raising awareness around vaccination. So they're a great partner for us. And absolutely, we're constantly looking for more nonprofits and showing how influencers and podcasting is a great space to raise awareness about positive social issues, not just to move products, but to be a voice for important initiatives. So yeah, when you see those types of companies on Podcorn, it's the same thing, outreaching and talking about how you want to spread love and raise awareness. A lot of them are willing to pay for it. So even though they're not for profit, they do compensate podcasters to spread the word and to create the work that they do because they know it's important. So yeah, we're doing a lot to educate those types of companies about the value of working with creators. So we're going to see a lot more of those.
Awesome. Hope that answers your question, Rich and Nick. We answered that question. How do you know what brands to approach? Is there a catalog or something to browse?
So in your sponsorship feed, you'll see the sponsorship opportunities available. You can browse them. You can see details about the campaigns, what brands are looking for. Some brands indicate like whether they want to reach females or males or more details. So you can, whatever fits for you, you can send them a proposal. So we do right off the bat open it up when you first sign up so that you get access to everything and see what really fits you and what you like and based on your passions and interests.
Yeah, and I think every Tuesday or Monday you get an email saying the new sponsors that have just signed up or started new campaigns with Podcorn. So it's really helpful. Kind of just reminds you that like, okay, Monday I'm going to spend some time on Podcorn applying to some jobs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think this question is for me. You mentioned that some of your podcast episodes were monetized, but not all of them. So can we monetize specific episodes? For example, for an episode on the stock market, one-off, I can contact a brand for that one episode only? Absolutely. It's totally up to you. It depends what deal you strike up with that company. So for example, if I planned my season out in advance and I know that my 6th episode is going to be about granite countertops, then I might reach out to a very famous granite countertop brand and be like, hey, we're going to be talking specifically about granite countertops. Are you interested in advertising only on that episode? Because the rest of the episodes are going to be about competing countertops, competing materials. But for this one in particular, it might be a really great fit. So yeah, you can definitely do that, whether it's on Podcorn or off of Podcorn. There's tons of ways to, because these are baked in ads, meaning they're not, they're not going to be dynamically changing based on the time of year or anything, or the location or anything like that. You can kind of do whatever it is. Yeah. Ari says I'm multitasking. Yeah. Yes, dynamic ads. Do you want to speak a little bit about dynamic ads and how that's not what Podcorn does?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we don't do dynamic ads. We don't see it as a competitive product where it's like one or the other. If you do one, you can't do the other. So absolutely, it's just, with dynamic ad inserts, creators don't monetize as much. Like every smaller or up and coming creator that we talk to, they monetize pennies per listener hour through dynamic ad insertions. It really sort of favors the top of the top creators. When you're already big, you can monetize through dynamic ad insertions because it's so strictly impression based that it leaves little room to show other value. So this is why we want to supplement as alternative monetization native, because it's actually a lot more beneficial to the brands too, because they're not just an ad and a disruption, they're more a part of the conversation and the creator's story, and it's more episodically relevant and listeners can get a lot more benefit from it. So it's very different. We don't do it. So we don't do anything retroactive. If you already have episodes live and you want to put ads in past episodes, we don't offer those opportunities currently. That doesn't mean you can't use someone else to do that, but everything that we do is for future episodes. Anything that's up and coming that you want to create with an advertiser in mind, or if you have an episode coming up and you want to integrate an advertiser, then that's the opportunities that we offer.
Yeah, I totally think you're right, Agnes, that there's a place for both and different use cases for both. I think, studies have shown that there's nothing more powerful than a host read ad, just because the relationship that you and the audience have. But there does seem to be a use case for dynamic or streaming inserted ads where, like you said, the back catalog example, I think that's pretty interesting. And for anyone looking to learn more about the ad side of the podcasting business, Sounds Profitable is a newsletter that's been extremely helpful for me upping my advertising pod ad game, if you will. It's written by a gentleman named Brian Barletta, and he really geeks out over this stuff, but finds a way to still communicate it where regular folk like us can kind of digest it. And that's where I started to see more of, like, they both have a place in the space. Here's why you would use dynamic. But there's almost, there's no substitute for.
Yeah, dynamic is scalable for advertisers for sure.
Right.
So but through tech, we're able to scale the unscalable, which is working with creators and making it easy. But I think it's an easy way to monetize, but then it's a hard way to monetize because you don't monetize as much. But it's great down the line once you get bigger. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think there's a world for both, and sophisticated brands should do both.
And yeah, just going off of that, Wanda says, what does native mean in this context?
So native is just content that relates to your podcast. It's in your voice. You either bake it into the episode as you're creating the episode as part of the production, or it's an ad that you yourself insert wherever it is that you're going to insert it for the brand. But it's absolutely done by the host. It's in the host's voice. It's usually episodically relevant, usually relates to your passions and interests, but it's done by you. It's not put in a random spot like pre, mid, or post roll. You decide where it lives within the episode and how it's integrated.
Yes, love it. I just put 2 links into the chat. One is for Sounds Profitable, the newsletter that Rock mentioned, and the other one is for Iceberg News, which is Mark Stedman's new-ish podcast newsletter that I very much recommend. Wanda, of course, anytime. Let's go to another question. Here we go. Is it okay if I pitch my podcast in Spanish?
Yes, but again, because our UI is English, I'm not sure that every brand, you're going to be more limited for sure. If you do have an English-speaking podcast, I mean, you can go for it. I've seen podcasters get hired. A Spanish-speaking podcast, I've seen podcasters get hired, especially since, a lot of brands do reach out to Spanish-speaking demographic as well and want to target broadly. It depends if the person hiring you can know Spanish. So.
Yeah, I think maybe if it's a product that says they're like, we're looking to reach a Spanish-speaking audience, you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes,
absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes people do say exactly who they're trying to reach.
Or you could be based in the U.S., but you're just targeting, but you're like majority of your listeners are in the U.S., but your podcast is in Spanish, and you have like a big Spanish community that listens to you, or Spanish speaking community, but it's still targeting majority of a U.S. demographic, then that I don't see why not, as long as the person hiring you can understand.
Yeah, I should give you all a list of the brands that have hired me and my podcast to run ads, because it's really all over the place. It's amazing how many brands are on Podcorn. Here is an interesting one. How are the profile stats generated?
So that's stuff we get from the hosting providers, again, because you connect with our prefix, which is just like a URL that is added at the beginning of each episode, audio file in your RSS feed. We're able to get that accurate information directly from your hosting provider. Otherwise, you have to provide screenshots. If you're not required to connect our prefix upon sign up, but it does limit you in the sense that you have to more so provide screenshots, and brands have to rely on the fact whether it's accurate or not, and trust you and so forth.
Hope that answers your question.
But as far as profile information, like you put that in about your podcast, and over time we're actually going to be collecting a lot more information too that we've noticed helps supplement hires, like whether you have a dog or more kind of personal stuff that podcasters want to volunteer that we can share with advertisers to build out their profile.
Cool. If your podcast is new, we answered that one. Maybe a silly question. What are hauls? HAULS.
Yeah, hauls are basically
Not a silly question. No silly questions.
No silly questions. It's when you talk about a bunch of different brands or a bunch of different products you acquired from one brand. It's usually like a shopping segment or a favorite segment where you talk about a bunch of different products. So it could be a skincare haul, it could be a fashion haul, it could be a tech haul where you bought a bunch of tech products or got a bunch of tech products and you integrate the sponsor as one of the brands or one of the products in your haul. So
love it. Thank you, Agnes. Because we're running late, let's answer 2 more questions. And then if there's any question that for some reason I have been skipping over because the ask a question section keeps putting it to the bottom and it is really urgent, please feel free to post it into the regular chat so that I see it right now. And if we still can't answer it, you have my email address and I am very much willing to answer questions offline. And Agnes, I can forward ones to you that are very specifically related to Podcorn. We are available. I am the person behind Squadcast social media. So number 1, I'm always there. Number 2, be nice, I'm a real human. Let's go with the next question. Okay, have some interest and natural opportunities based on my experience and random mentions by guests, but afraid to pull the trigger because I'm still building my listenership. So not so much a question, but what do you say to folks who are still kind of building, but not really ready to take the plunge yet to advertise?
I would just take the plunge, practice makes perfect. Practice, get some sponsorships under your belt because it takes time, right? So just start sending proposals. If it doesn't feel right after you get into a conversation with a brand or get hired, again, like everything is held in escrow. So you can change your mind. There's no contract. You don't sign your life away to the brand just because you get hired. You can back away, but I would get into those conversations. Get a feel for it, get talking points for brands, start figuring out like what it is that they want and maybe crafting a future episode that's like 2 months from now when you're ready. But yeah, I would just say just start. If you're thinking about it, then do it. The time is now and practice makes perfect. So yeah, just go for it.
Oh, we got really, really good questions. JB, I hope that answered your question. We're going to Ben's question. That's funny. Where is Ben? Ben, where's your question? If you want to repost it, I might be able to find it better. Because, here it is. Okay. I have a podcast that is published on another network every Friday via their podcast feed. They told me I could do my own advertisements, but when I tried to sign up for Podcorn, I was unable to for my shows since the network had an account. Is there a way around this so I can feature ad partnerships on just my shows every Friday while published on current network? Hope that makes sense.
Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe you can email support and we can look into it and what is the
support email? Support
at podcorn.com. Yeah. Super simple. But yeah, I think that could be an issue because if the network owns your podcast and they have to authenticate the podcast and then unless like someone from the network can sign you up and give you access or they can send proposals to the opportunities that you're interested in. It's just a matter of like who the owner is of because they'll go to the email when you authenticate your podcast on Podcorn. It'll go to the email of the owner. So whoever is the owner of the podcast can authenticate it.
Ben, I hope that helps. Sorry if it's not the answer you wanted.
But please email support and then we can dive deeper and see what the issue is, or maybe it's something different. I could be making it up, so.
I think in the interest of time, we're going to let Agnes have the rest of her Friday back. There are still a ton of questions that are unanswered. So what I will do is say this. If you're here listening to this right now and you're able to take your question, copy and paste it into an email to me, that's lovely. I'll put my email address again. It's ariel@squadcast.fm. If you're not here and you're not hearing this and I don't hear from you, I'll find your question and I'll try to get it answered into the chat here. And if you see this later, please feel free to email me your question as well. Agnes, any words to close us out from the Podcorn side?
No, nothing. I just hope everyone keeps at it and tries. And I hope to hear amazing sponsorship integrations from all of you, and hope that you monetize and become really successful. I mean, I've seen it happen with my experience at Google and YouTube, and I've seen creators grow from nothing to huge celebrities. And I'm really excited for where podcasting is going and the future of this medium. I think it's even way more powerful than any medium before it because of the power of conversation and the length and all that. So I'm very excited for the future stars of everybody who's up and coming and for what's to come in the medium. So yeah, hope to see you all be very successful.
Love it.
Thanks for making time for us. We really appreciate it. And I certainly learned a lot. And by the chat and the questions, I think folks are enjoying it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm so excited to be a part and to share anything that I can.
And a reminder for folks who are not yet using Squadcast but are interested in using Squadcast, you can use code PODCORN at checkout. That's PODCORN at squadcast.fm. And you can get 1 free month of Squadcast. So definitely take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
And we're going to keep posting that keyword everywhere. We want you to make sure that you take advantage of it, because I believe that in order for your podcast to really reach its heights, it's got to have really great audio quality, and Squadcast can help you get there.
Absolutely. I mean, advertisers look at that. They listen to your podcast, they listen to episodes, they get a snippet. So even if you're small, like if your production quality is high and everything sounds great and crisp, brands want to be guests on those types of shows. And so, yes, absolutely. We're huge supporters and hope you try Squadcast out if you're not already using it.
And
thanks for the plug.
Yeah. And just to close us out, folks, a few more events happening in the month of June for Squadcast. Next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, we're having an event called Breaking Remote Content Barriers, which is cryptic for a reason. You're going to find out what that means when you attend. So go ahead and click on the link that Rock just posted into the chat. Make sure you're signed up and you'll be notified of the event when it happens. June 28th, we're having an event called How to Create the Perfect Video Setup for Beginners. We're doing that with Reincubate Camo. And that is going to be on the 28th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to get information about all of that, just follow us on social media. We're at Squadcast FM on every social. And while you're at that, make sure you're following Podcorn on all the socials at Podcorn FM.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Have
Perfect.
a great rest of your day and happy weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.